show. We about to chop it up. Come to the show. We got some things we can talk about. Come to the show. We about to chop it up. Come to the show. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it. Chop it. Chop it up. Chop. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it. Chop it. Chop it up. Chop it up. Chop it. We got some things we can talk about. Come to the show. We about to chop it up. Come to the show. We got some things we can talk about. Come to the show. We about to chop it up. Come to the show. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it. Chop it. Chop it. Chop it up. Chop it. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it. Chop it. Chop it up. Chop it up. Chop it. We got some things we can talk about.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Chop Shop. I'm your host, Pastor Marvin McKenstry Jr. As always, blessed, privileged, honored to be able to come to you and bring you great kingdom content on the Chop Shop. And we have a fire conversation set up for you tonight, just like the one we had last week, as we're going to be talking to one of the greatest prophetic voices of this time. To get a prophetic forecast. Listen, y'all, this is a place where he lives, where he dwells, where he stays. But before we get to that, I gotta, as always, bring on my right hand and my left hand, my main man, Mr. Shaka Pitts on the ones and twos. How you doing, man? Making the magic happen, Techniques 1200s, because anything else is uncivilized.
Brother Marv, what's good, man? How you doing?
Man, listen, I am tripping, man. Like this Omicron thing. So the good news, Omicron is we on a decline. They said it would be about a 2-week spike and we would start to see things declining, and we're starting to see that decline here in the northeast region of the country. The West Coast is still in some trouble, but we still praying, man. But I don't even want to really talk about that. I want to talk about these anti-vaxxers who are tempting this thing and playing with it. Lady deliberately contracts COVID from her son, trying to prove a point, and now you tell them about it, Shot.
So she's actually a famous singer in Europe, and she's an anti-vaxxer, public anti-vaxxer, and she decided that she wanted to get what they call over there the COVID pass, right? So pretty much, you get it and get it over with. It's what she wanted to do. So she caught the disease from her son, who's a teenager, and she's no longer with us at age 55.
Listen, y'all, and let me tell you what they telling me, because I got some pretty good friends in high places locally here in the health department, and it's a blessing. I wouldn't dare call their names, but this is being dubbed the variant of the irresponsible and the unvaccinated. I don't give vaccine advice. It's your body. You do what you want to do with it. But the irresponsible part of it, the studies show that what we're seeing is people between the ages of 20 and 29, 30 and 39, meaning that Superman. That's them years when I had that S on my chest, Shot, when I would go out in a blizzard with no coat on. I'm wrapped up, tied up, hat on. I don't play with it, man. But listen, y'all, we have way more information than we had in the past, and we can do better. I got one more thing that I got to drop on you, Shot, and I just need your reaction. Brother, I watched Joe Biden yesterday, and man,
what's up with you? And you've been hitting Joe. You've been hitting Joe for like 2 years.
Listen, it looks scary, man. Like Joe looked like at any given time. You remember the part in Beetlejuice where the man went to talk and he swung his finger and his bottom of his jaw fell off? Man, Joe looked like at any given time, mid-sentence, boom, the bottom of that jaw gonna pop off or something, man. And Joe, y'all be praying for this president, man.
Please do
praying
that.
for this guy. He old, man, and it's interesting. Well, look, y'all, we got to break from this and get to these church announcements, because we got a live report right now. The men of the We Are Us movement are in the Park Heights community, walking the streets. So let's cue right to that shot, and then we can come back to the flyers and things, because I'm excited about that.
Okay. Oh, okay. Hey,
all right. Cat, what's going on, Cat? We got you live on the Chop Shop, man. Coming to us live from the streets of Park Heights, man.
Noise. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, man. Hey, listen, that's good news, man. That's good noise.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Why is it so low?
We can hear you real good.
Can you put on the speaker?
You need some earbuds or something, man. We can hear you real good. The mic real good.
Yeah. You got the volume up, but can't you put it on the speaker though? Where's the speaker?
So right now, while they taking care of that, the minute that we are us movement in the Park Heights community preparing for Saturday. On Saturday, hey, Shock, do that thing where you split us with the flyer. On Saturday, we're going to be out in the Park Heights community. The weather put some alterations on what we plan to do on Martin Luther King Day. So we just shifting because that's what we do. We don't shut things down. We just shift. And we're going to be shifting over this Saturday to still have our I Want to Live and Not Die crusade right in the streets of Park Heights. We're going to be there live. We got some guest speakers. We're going to have plenty of resources, jobs, you name it. We're going to be boots on the ground like we are. And y'all know how we do on Saturdays. The ladies can come. We're going to meet at 3718 West Belvedere Avenue. Everything is going to be right there on that spot. And we're going to be live and in color, making sure that we do what we always do in honor of Martin Luther King. We serve our community. All right, we got the brothers now. Can y'all hear me?
iPhone.
Can y'all hear me?
We need to probably go inside the church.
Well, look, if they can't hear us, you see the visual, and the visual is enough to say it. Cold, not cold, boots on the ground is what we do. The minute that we are us movement out in the street, making it happen as always. He's inside now. We might can get a few words with him. Can you hear us now, Kat?
How you doing, sis?
Can you hear us now, Kat?
Yeah, I can hear you, man, but it's not you, man. Larry don't know how to work it. He got a new phone. Yeah, I can hear you, bro. What's going on?
Well, look, I told man, listen, we about to have this conversation with Dr. Daniels, man, but I'm excited to be able to show the people the boots on the ground work that we got going on, preparing for the big event this weekend. If you had the opportunity to just say one thing to the people, what would you say, Kat? Can you hear me? All right, y'all. Well, we're gonna go ahead and keep this train moving. The audio ain't good on their end, but we were able to hear them loud and clear. And the thing is, you hear their footsteps all up and down the Park Heights community, preparing for this Saturday. As I said before, we will be on the ground. I want to live and not die. The whole thing. Last year, we put the Baltimore peace agreement together. This year, it's all about life. You see the slogan, no unity, no life. It'll be hosted and emceed by yours truly, Pastor Marvin McKenstry. We got some dynamic speakers that are going to be there. We also are going to have our signature resources. We got interviews already scheduled for people who are going to show up there saying, I need a job. They're going to come talk to us, myself and my brother Maurice, and they're going to have an interview appointment given to them that day with an employer that's going to be ready to hire them on the spot. Y'all, it's going to be live. It's going to be a happening. Make sure you come through. Even if you want to come through and support this event, unlike our nighttime events, the sisters can come and support. We're going to be out there live and in color. All right, y'all, we're not going to overlook it. As always, we still got to stop the beef hotline that we want you. We're never going to have a chop shop and not talk stop the beef hotline. Y'all, listen, we are 20 days in to the new year, and I believe based on the quadruple shooting and what just happened up Penn North, we're at 20 murders in 20 days. But we are not discouraged. What we need you to do is to make sure that you are hitting these numbers, 443-431-3705 or 443-522-7848, hitting us and letting us know where the beef is. The person that's not trying to go out like that, we will do everything. Every level of intervention is in play for us. We pay off debts. We'll put you on a plane and fly you to where you need to be, where safety is, or whatever it takes to get you into a place where you're not losing your life. Even if you got to eat in these streets, you ain't got to die. Perfect segue for our peace agreement. The Baltimore peace agreement has been making its rounds. It's still making its rounds. and we are getting the people who are in these streets, street organizations who are in the line of fire, hustlers, all of that, to sign off again to say, if I gotta eat in these streets, I ain't gotta die in these streets. We need everybody that has community that could use this peace agreement. These brothers are keeping their word. Everybody that has a community could use the peace agreement to reach out to us, because we want to bring this precious gift that God has given to the Men of the We Are Us movement to your community. All right, I think that's all. No, I don't know why I keep forgetting this. If you're looking for a job, we are looking for you. The Mayor's Office of Employment Development and our precious Youth Opportunity Program. Listen, y'all, we got some fire stuff coming up. Earlier today on our Yo Baltimore show, I talked to a couple of ladies from Movable Feast, and they're looking for drivers, van drivers, at $18 an hour. They're looking for a couple of chefs, not the full chef, with the prep cooks. Looking for a couple of prep cooks, full time, $18 an hour with benefits. Y'all know what to do. Get in my inbox right now. Holler at me. We got these opportunities. Scan to register the Youth Opportunity Program. Right now, I'm holding it down as my man Dwayne Williams and moved on to greater things. I'm holding it down. So hit me directly, and we're gonna make sure that we get you a job, because at the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, we are focused on economic justice, making sure that the resources get to where they need to be, building a workforce development system that actually works for the residents of the city of Baltimore. Whew, let me catch my breath. Listen, they had this little saying that they would say back in the day when the good preacher came to town. They would tell you, sit in your tent doors. I'm going to tell you tonight, if you think last week's show was a Pentecostal fire, I'm going to need you to sit in your tent doors, because the prophetic anointing of God, and I say that unashamedly, has been showing up in this space as we have been previewing and prospecting this new year. And tonight, we have one of the greatest prophetic voices in this generation and in this time with us. Before I do that, I do want to send our love and our continued prayers to Minister Carlos Muhammad as he's taking care of some things with his family. He said definitely give his love to the people and to the bishop, and he wasn't able to be with us, but we're going to look forward to speaking to him in the near future. I actually got excited about the opportunity to be one-on-one with my guest. Again, one of the greatest prophetic voices of this day and this time, this generation, this dispensation, whatever word you want to go get. And he is the priest, the head priest, the pastor, senior pastor and bishop of the St. Martin's Church of Christ. We have with us tonight to sit down and go one-on-one, the one and only Dr. Kevin Daniels. Doc, thank you for being with us tonight. How you feeling?
Real good. What's going on, family? Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you good and clear. I got my little co-host over here, though.
Oh, there it go.
Right now.
You're training, you're mentoring.
I'm trying to get him right, but I got to show him the part where he got to be behind the scenes before he be on camera. Doc, listen, I'm actually excited, as much as I miss having Minister Carlos with us because of how the flow is. I'm excited to get to have this one-on-one space with you tonight, because I just got off the phone with my mother. I said, well, Ma, I got Dr. Daniels on the show tonight, and I said I got him one-on-one. So I'm going to pry all into him and make him just have a prophetic fit all over my show tonight. But listen, Doc, I do want to say, last week I had Bishop Sean Bell on, and the Pentecostal fire of God came into this place, man. So Be free, unhinged, and let's have the conversation, because we're talking about the prophetic forecast. I know you to be a man that understands the Jewish calendar and to understand what it means when we come into this new European calendar that we follow here in America. And can you just give us a projection to what where we are in time? The Bible said the sons of Issachar knew the times. That's one of the things I love about your ministry. Tell us where we are as it pertains to understanding the times.
Yeah, one good thing I want to just say, welcome to the family. One of the good things about where we are, and I like the, as you stated, I like the Jewish calendar in the sense that I've been watching it more longitudinally over the last 10 years. I didn't just accept it I started watching it to see if its predictive power, if it in some sense could speak to current contemporary moments and be applicable to this particular time. And, you know, it literally is, and it was. And, you know, as scientists, I look at it from a longitudinal perspective. If it's reliable and verifiable during a long period of time, then it is something that we can consider to be accurate or probable. And where we are at this particular time, and I've said it even with Brother Minister, and I lift up the Brother Minister too, because that's my guy, and we normally get down together right here on the set. But where we are at this particular time, if you would follow, and let me just say something about the Jewish calendar. I say this to my African brothers and sisters, that the Jewish calendar, and I know I'll get some controversy on this, it springs out of over 400 years in Kemet, when they were in Kemet, and African people taught them how to follow the lunar solar cycle. They did not come into that full understanding until after they left the history. John Henry Clark calls them the Hebrews. After they left Egypt, Kemet, after they left it, there, North Africa, there they begin to set up the various Levitical cycle and the various Melchizedekian cycle. So at this particular time, we owe a great of debt. We owe a great of gratitude to African people who this was their expertise to be able to do that. What the Jews did, which is, of course, most of us are as well, what the Jews did was kind of celebrated it more, but the African people really brought this. Thomas Oden does a phenomenal job on talking about how most of our people got the ability for timing and direction comes out of the very loins of African people. As a matter of fact, Melchizedek, Abraham bowed to Melchizedek, who was an African priest, and of the king of Salem. And there's where God draws Jerusalem from. It is from an African king, ultimately because he tapped into something that Abraham could not tap into, which was God the Most High. There is where Melchizedek tapped into that, and the Bible said Abraham bowed to him because he had tapped into something that even Abraham could not tap into at that very moment. We pay a lot of kudos to Abraham. We pay because it's a part of our Judeo-Christian faith. But let me just take a few minutes and celebrate African people, because it was indigenous to our very core, the very Hebrew calendar that I'm going over today. And we have gone through, I've said it before, we have gone through Passover, we've gone through all of that, which is the death, burial, resurrection of Christ. We have gone through Pentecost. Pentecost in that very moment, of course, is the Holy Spirit, which is the restraining, sustaining ability that's working with all of us, heightening our dimensional capacities to think and see into the possibilities of God. But now where we are at this particular moment is what we call the tabernacles. There is the trumpet blowing. We talked about that before, the ingathering. In other words, there is a divine call for us to come back to our indigenous heritage as sons and daughters of God. That call is being trumpeted, the Jubilee trumpet, all the ram's horn, all of that was about to call the army together, call the leaders back together, because it is time for you to operate and to reign with your God in the sense of in the earth itself. This year is powerful because the trumpet is sounding again, but ultimately this year is what we consider to be 5782, and there is that epic 2022 is represented in that. And when you understand the Jewish calendar, it does not deal with that we've just been here for 5,700 years. No, the Jewish calendar more so deals with genealogies. And that is the part that we lost here in America, the ability to tell our stories over a long period of time and transmit that to our children. And so that's what leaves sometimes a deficit of possibility, because ultimately our children hadn't been fully transmitted the African culture for over 200,000 years or 10,000 years or more. But now we've come into a better understanding. This year is the year of what they call a Shemitah year, Shmita. This is the year of release. It is
My God.
It is the year of release. It is the year of rest. It is the year where we go to different dimensions of faith. I dare not go into different dimensions of faith. But it's also the year where it wasn't because of agricultural. We were an agricultural people. It was the year you let the land lay fallow. You give it a rest. Instead of continually working it, you give it a rest. But that symbolism to us in the contemporary world is the fact of it's the sense of justice, where we talk about the fair share, access, correct things, and also due process. This was the year, every 7th year, he told them, release people. Don't hold them like this. Give them their access. Give them their just due. Give them their fair share. Give them and correct what was wrong. Retributive justice, restorative justice, distributive justice, and procedural justice. This is a spiritual year where God declares that that's his focus. I'm freeing. I want my people free. It is just so interesting that we deal with the voting rights, criminal justice, social determinants of health. Had we paid attention to this kind of cycle, there would be no poor among us.
My God. My God, you on live with the Chop Shop, and we have DrKevin Daniels with us tonight. And yes, y'all hear me flipping pages because I'm here taking notes. I need y'all to make sure right now that you get in the comments and you literally type the names of people that need to be here. Because as I said before, we have one of the greatest prophetic voices of this generation here. And he is a man of God that's able to help us to understand the times. And we are talking already. How we say, Bishop, you already talking good tonight. You talked about those 7-year cycles, and I know that in numerology, we always say 7 is the year of completion. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the 7-year cycles and how they're applicable to us in this time?
Yeah, the 7 years were, of course, from a more agricultural or even a traditional biblical perspective. It always dealt with, and we deal with it in a practical sense of 7 years of debt, release people's debt, all of those kind of things. But what makes it so powerful for us was, of course, every 7 years, the book of Leviticus talked about the fact that you go ahead and work the land, but give it a rest. It mimics the 7 days of the week. Man will work for 6 days, but then enter into a restful period where the body itself can regenerate and rejuvenate itself, so that it can be reflective, it can be restful, and it can be released. That's usually what a weekend does for us. It separates us from the work so that we can enter into a period of relaxation where everything is poured back into the cup so that the cup can be able to give to other people during the week. But far too often, we've not entered into that whole 7-day concept. The same was with the earth. And that is the reason why you and I are experiencing what we call these environmental injustices, because we've not treated the planet in kind with what God has suggested. You sow into the ground agriculturally, but then on the 7th year, you allow it to lay fallow. Again, give it a rest. And faith was important because God said, I will take care of you off of all of the 6 years that you put into the ground. I'll let you live off of that in the 7th year. And that speaks to our ability to circulate as well, because everybody in the land would have had something in the 7th year. Well, spiritually, that literally says in Hebrews 4, where we enter into God's rest, cease from your labor and enter into God's collective rest. That's why we're called a body, because you and I are a collective entity in the earth. And what is bothersome is we have multiple denominational faiths, different political perspectives, and somehow or another, we can't bring all of that together so that it can be both and. And we're in trouble today because of what we've done to the land. We're in trouble, and that is why the Paris Accord is critical, because what we're reaching a 1.5 Celsius mark in the sense where the planet loses, it pulls it off of its axis. And if we reach 2.0, we don't know whether or not the earth itself, according to environmentalists, whether it will dissipate because there's too much heat in the atmosphere because of the kind of things that we're doing. So 7 gives the land a time to rest, but then it also gives us as a people time for justice.
Time for justice. Time for justice. You can't stop talking right there. You on Live with the Chop Shop. We come to you every Thursday at 6 p.m. And today we're on with DrKevin Daniels, the bishop and the senior pastor of the St. Martin's Church of Christ, one of the greatest prophetic voices of this time. And Dr. Daniels is here teaching tonight. And you talked about justice. So when we look at where we are, we know last year we saw something that we didn't think we really would see again, as George Floyd became Freddie Gray 2.0, and we've seen another potential uprising and some of those things that literally kind of blew me away, because like I said, I didn't think it was possible that we would find ourselves in that space. And now you saying that we're entering into a space where we're going, where justice is going. I need you to frame that, because people have many different ideas of what's just, right? Of what justice is. But the justice of God, I'm continually learning, is something that's completely different from the idea of man. His ways are not our ways, neither his thoughts. So can you please frame out the justice that you're talking about to us so that we can walk with God in the understanding and not have a misplaced expectation?
Yeah, the sense of justice, again, we always got to remember that God has called us as a collective, not individuals. And one of the challenges to our country, our beloved country, I'll say it, is the fact that it functions more from a individualistic kind of perspective. And that brings moral and ethical challenges to us because we're thinking about ourselves. If you look across the spectrum of the 12 life zones, institutions, families, all of those kind of things, at the very base of it is individualism and not collectivism. And justice for God says that as the collective evolves, as the collective goes forth, individual needs are met. And when you start talking about fair share, when you look across the spectrum of humankind, I remember in the scriptures, it said, Jesus said, the poor will be with you always. And ultimately, he said that because we are functioning in the time that he was in Rome, Roman, Grecian, all of those kind of possibilities. They had the ability to help and did not. The ability to care and did not. The mind of God, when you study all of the literature, is concerned about individual destinies as well. we are a many-bodied people, multiple across. You're talking about 7 billion people in the world, all unique in its expression. But the issue is that we function tribal instead of collective.
So let me jump in, Doc, because you just opened up something for me. Are we to understand then that when the Bible says the poor you'll have with you always, a misinterpretation of that is the idea that poverty is an inevitable condition, more so than the reality that when God says that, he understands that the condition of man and how we function is that we always gonna make somebody poor for our own gain.
Yeah, I don't even have to explain that. You brought the analysis. He said they're going to be with you always based upon our level of behavior as a collective. Again, it wasn't a statement of doom as much as it was a statement of fact during that particular time.
I've always heard that interpreted to be that there's an inevitable condition of poverty that's always going to be in the earth, as though it was something that comes from God or something that's of God. Wow.
No, it's not from God. It's really it's not an eternal factor. It's really a human factor. When you watched how we behaved over time, all the way back from hunters and gatherers, it has always been about, of course, the competitive edge. It's a good thing, but it is not to leave people disenfranchised to the point where they can't access their destiny. And the problem is that when you even look at our country and where it is, even though people don't like to talk about it much, you can't start people where you start them and then say catch up. Again, we're not talking about socialism, we're talking about social justice. I get in some of my circles with evangelical, my brothers and sisters, they want to argue with me about whether or not we socialism or this is socialism. No, this ain't a handout. This is equal access. If you give me access to my destiny, ultimately I can move myself to where I need to be. Justice just says, give me my share, give me access, correct the wrongs, but then also give me due process so that I can flourish in what they call eudaimonia. Well, I can flourish as God intended me to.
We don't separate the body of Christ as you talking about the condition of the world, but as a young pastor, a new leader, 3 years in, I gotta ask you, based on what we're talking about now, where does the body of Christ, the believers, even leaders, where should we look to position ourselves so that we can be in the space that God has called us individually to be, or collectively collectively to be, to support and even to progress in the time that we're living in?
Well, you know, and God doesn't leave. He doesn't leave us without a map, a roadmap, and that's why I like studying this stuff, because, well, not stuff, it's sacred to me. But if we know that we're in the cycle of trumpets, God is sounding the alarm, sending signals to people to correct, to come into some level of access. What we know about the Feast of Trumpets, just in the Old Testament, even in the New Testament. And I think regardless of what your faith perspective is, I think this could still connect with wherever you are. And there were almost about 8 things that happened during this particular time. Number 1, it was the calling in Numbers 10, the calling of the assemblies. In other words, John 17, make them one as we are one. So there is a collective call going out, I know from God, to make us one, to call us to assemble. Number 2, the journeying of the camp. Movement. Move with God. some of this stuff is not left up to chance. It's right in the word itself. A lot of time it is an interpretive deficit that somehow or another we want to interpret it for our own gains or to fit, because we become, and we said it the last time, we've made our positions profitable. So in some sense, we don't want to change it because it helps us be profitable where we are. And that's the challenge of unity for those of us in the body and those of us that, because the body is supposed to be a lead agency to the world. That's what his intent was. It was not for the body to just stay the body for and in itself. It was to magnify itself so that it can also make impact on the world itself, to demonstrate to the world that this really who God is. And far too often we have done the reverse because of sometimes just our ability to be divisive. We've made it in the reverse. I think that we are not left to chance. The calling of the assemblies, the journeying of the camp, the calling of leadership. Again, there is no doubt in my mind that God is raising up people that understands the collective value of God and not just denominations. Because what we've seen by the pandemic is the fact that it didn't care either way.
It did not discriminate.
Very leveling metric. Very leveling. It leveled us all. Whether you spoke in tongues or whether you cussed, it leveled you.
Yes, sir. I'm going to use that one probably Sunday.
It didn't matter.
Yes, sir. It didn't matter.
All of us, God forbid, all of us people were in the hospital. It was the leveling agent over the last 2 years. The problem is, what have we become?
My God.
In spite of it. I just think it's the calling of the assemblies, leaders, the journeying of the camp, calling the princes, blowing the alarm, sounding the alarm to people. Because when you understand what's happening environmentally, there's even a fight in beliefs with that, and partisan fight about whether or not there is environmental injustice, and we know it is, based upon the weather, based upon what's happening with health. All of that is critical of a globe that is shifting in its axis. That's environmental justice. To get to a level of 2.0 Celsius would send the weather conditions around the globe into a frenzy, because ultimately people that should be having winter will be having summer. All of that is a critical issue, but then it is it's a bipartisan issue, or it's a partisan issue because some thought processes, some people don't want to see it as something that's very dangerous for us. And it is a challenge. It's a challenge.
My God. You're on Live with the Chop Shop. We're talking to DrKevin Daniels, and he was in the middle of giving us the 8 principles.
I gave the rest of them.
We stopped at number 4. I was going to make sure you gave us the rest of them because I'm over here taking notes. We're talking about the calling of the assemblies, the journey of the camp, the calling of leadership, the calling of the princes, and the blowing of the alarm. Dr. Daniels' class is in session. Listen, y'all, I need y'all to get in the comments, tag somebody that should be a part of this conversation. Share this video on your page so that all your friends, and hit that heart button so that Facebook's algorithm can go crazy. We are on with one of the greatest prophetic voices on this kingdom platform, and he is giving us some directional information as leaders to the roadmap that God intends for us to follow in this dispensation. Doc, you got us. We on number 5.
Yeah, the next one is the war and any enemy oppression. We know that there is even in any war, there's airstrikes and there are ground strikes. You go in the air, you go in the air to take out large targets, so to speak. I'm not calling for war or calling for war on the ground to America. No, that's not what I'm calling for. We're talking about spiritual things. We're talking about if there's most faith traditions, they do believe in some level of darkness, whether principalities and powers, spiritual wickedness in high places. Henry Wink talks about that and what that looks like in entities. So again, we got to go to war against darkness. And so when you see people civically like you and I that are out on the streets and doing civic responsibility, I've heard people say that the church is not civic. And then I had to challenge them on that, their understanding of what a civic organization is. Civic organizations deal with serving communities. And the very birthing of the church happened not only in us being in a place where we wait to get spiritual ourselves for Pentecost, but the next phase of the birthing of the church was civic responsibility. So again, I do challenge people. You may not know how to do it, but don't diminish or damage people that do, because we're doing this to help you as well. So again, when people tell me, the church wasn't born for no civic engagement, that is just simply not a historical fact nor a historical truth. We were born to make sure that we also, because you cannot be this selfish with God and not understand his people and what he's concerned with.
Amen. Y'all, you on live with the Chop Shop. We got the great DrKevin Daniels. We about to get principle number 6, helping us understand the times tonight.
The Days of Gladness is another principle that I think represented the Feast of Trumpets, the Days of Gladness, in the sense of being festive. One of the things that you understand across biblically from that sense is the fact that he always called for a feast, a celebration. So again, coming together, I see church or however, whatever your faith perspective is, he's called us for celebration, and no one knows that better than particularly African-American people. We've had to create festivity just for us to survive in this country. And beyond that, we created festivity. So again, rejoicing and being festive is a part of our call, is part of God's call to us, is that we can rejoice, because we may not know the middle, but we do know the beginning and the end of this. And of course, there is nothing you can do based upon his rank. There is nothing you can do from stop him from doing what he does. So he calls us to rejoice. That's why when we get in church, when we get on this, let's just go past church. Black folk always knew how to get down. We used to have community block parties. People still get me and say, you're a bishop, you ain't supposed to be dancing. But when I get around my family and my kinfolk, that's what we did. And we survived devastation because of dancing. Again, my mama just celebrated 80 years. And I got up on that floor because, again, that's what we did to survive down in Pennsylvania Avenue. We had block parties. We busted up tires, and we created gardens out of old May-pop tires. We created snowballs. We sold snowballs, all of that, because we are a festive people. And God is saying, don't lose your festivity.
So let me ask you a question, Bishop, because when I think about what you're saying right now, are we, and I guess I mean specifically now, the black community and maybe the black church, are we losing that sense of our identity as we kind of sink into a space that does not look like us? And I'm gonna be straight. I'm gonna shoot straight from the hip. We have become so envious of what our Caucasian brothers and sisters are doing in their worship space, that just that good old time, that cutting up and that washboard and that put hands together, feet on the floor, is something that seems to be moving away from our worship space as though that's not sacred to us anymore. Is that a mistake?
Well, it is, because um, even clinically, I'm a licensed, even clinically, rejoicing and festivity, it created a space where trauma could not go into the other 4 stages after a single event happened. Because when you deal with the trauma model says there is a single event. If you don't stop it at the single event, it goes into the multiple events, but then it goes into devastation of the body, but then it goes into devastation of the community. If we practice who and what we were at the moment of the single event, we've dealt with it in a way that prevents it from going into some of these deeper trauma levels. So again, music, dancing, all of that was who and what we are, and I haven't stopped it. It is a part of my habit. It is a part of my practice. That's what we did. I went to other day, and some of y'all not going to remember this because you're too young. I went across North Avenue, and they were fixing up Odell's.
Yes, I remember. I definitely remember.
That little hole in the wall gave us space for festivity. Again, I didn't always grow up in a Pentecostal church. I came Baptist. Baptist, we went out and had a good time.
Yes, sir.
I drove past Odell's and saw them fixing that up. I forgot what they said it's going to be. But then all of the memories flooded back. And I just sat there for a minute and say, wow, I remember Odell's. And sometimes the hardest part of where Black people were in this culture, Odell's, Gatsby's, Givenchy's, all of those spaces proved to be places of festivity. So again, that is called for. Days of Gladness is called for. I'm not saying everybody go to Odell's. No, that's not what I'm calling for. But he's calling for there should be a rejoicing in our community.
I think there's something to that principle, because we've been in such a pursuit of spiritual elevation that we have lost that sense of celebrating. Like, my thing is this. I'm the pastor, but I always get on my little brother because my little brother always having a party or something for his birthday, and he don't even invite me. Like, I can't come and celebrate my brother because the model or the image that we put out there is that we can't go into those spaces. And I've watched that rip families apart. You too holy to come to my celebration. I ain't coming to your church.
Yeah.
I believe there's something way deeper in principle to that.
That's more Western than it is Eastern, where our motherland is, because we brought music, we brought dancing to this continent that was here, that was never seen before. I'm not saying that because of Odell's I dance. Because of Africa, I dance.
Because of who I am, I dance.
That's indigenous to who and what I am. Don't take my rhythm. Don't take my harmony. Don't take my cadence. I march through this life because I have rhythm, I have cadence, and I have harmony. I know how to put it together. That's how we've always survived. Our ancestors survived that way, and it is biblical. Israel got its roadmap out of Kemet. I am sorry for those of you that like to think that they arose as a superpower without some kind of influence. We influenced these days of festivity. They learned how to dance in Egypt. They had to learn how. They rejoiced for 400 years there. So again, I know. I study history, and I'll get some pushback on that because we want to believe we always want to disassociate this Bible from who we are as a people, and you just can't do it. It is intertwined with that, and that's why he calls for Days of Gladness. We come together on Sundays as a collective, or Saturdays as a collective, to rejoice collectively. Individually, I went through something, but when I'm with my tribe on Sunday, we're together. We are rejoicing.
Put it together, Doc.
I love the expression of, that's why we can dance. We're the ones that put together little dance concerts during the pandemic. We couldn't go nowhere. We put together Zoom parties.
Versus.
Who does that?
Yes.
Who does that but Black people?
Yes, sir.
We shook Zoom. We got in the house and danced. We shifted it because of our cadence, our rhythm, our harmony. And all I'm saying is, and all God is saying in the principle there, is find your cadence.
My God.
The enemy can't throw your cadence off. He can't throw our rhythm off. We are still surviving in the midst of voting challenges, criminal justice, social determinants of health. We got a cadence. I ain't mean to get off too bad, but we got
You ain't off. You ain't off. Come on with it. I told you that's where we at on the Chop Shop.
We know harmony. My brothers and all of them, my uncles, would stand on the corner of Pennsylvania Avenue and sing songs without music. We knew harmony. And all I'm saying is, let's find our harmony again, and that's a biblical principle. God told them, rejoice. And again, I say rejoice. Let your moderation be known unto all men that I'm at hand.
Yes,
we have
Lord.
an eternal responsibility to festivity.
My God.
God is still supervising.
Bishop, I understand the prophetic nature of this right now to the people that are watching us, because we have been kind of put into a space by the pandemic, the current situation of the earth, that everything is to shut down. There's a shutdown mentality. I remember a year or two ago saying that we are what did you say? You were physically distancing, not socially distancing.
Right.
I think that a call back to celebration, a call to a space of celebration, reigniting the understanding that when we gathered in the faith house and we come together in those sacred spaces, that it's about us being able to be us, is something prophetic that's going out to our people tonight.
But the church has we've become such a profitable entity that we've lost the rhythm.
My God.
We've lost our harmony. Again, babies know how to find their key. We need to find our key. God is calling us this year to not only assembling as a collective, he's calling us to move, make some movement, journeying of the camp. He said, you have been here, you have been around this mountain too long. That's rhythm. That's knowing when you rotate, but then also when you circulate out of there. It's built into our system. And the calling of princes, leadership. We need leadership. We need to raise and focus on, that's what I love about what we're doing. Focus on raising people for leadership, because there is a cycle coming where we need to put these folk in leadership, and leadership is more than just the robes. Leadership is more than just $10,000 at Renzetti's and making sure you have your mitre and making sure we got lost somewhere. And we misunderstood that the function of the body is a leadership entity in the earth. And we are supposed to be not only the model, but the example this year. And until we hear what the Spirit is saying to the church, until we hear it on the 7 churches of Asia Minor, until we hear that, we are going to be out of step. Our country is going to be out of step. Our families are going to be out of step. And our health is going to be out of step. Your body works with a rhythm. And we must be called back to that. This year, I see Apostle Flanagan pop up.
Yes, sir.
We must be called back to that. The trumpet represents in the New Testament revelation. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. I've seen people come out of the pandemic worse than they were before they went in it. I'm thinking in my mind, how you still thinking like that? After the devastation that we've seen, the just and the unjust has experienced this. And this is still, some people say it came from God. God doesn't have to do anything wicked to us. We know how to do that. We know how to do that without him.
My God.
Yeah, we know how to do that without him. So again, my argument is, I'm not speaking out of any kind of something I pulled out of the air ducts of the Starship Enterprise. I'm pulling from the text, the interpretive text, that this cycle should be about calling of the assembly. We got to come together.
I'm getting that.
The camps. You can't move until you come together first.
Bishop, I'm getting a time check from my producer. Can we get principles 7 and 8, and then we're going to give you time to have a final word so we can get out of here on time?
The solemn assemblies, it's a time of prayer, of fasting. God is calling us to spiritual life, devotional life. Woe to anybody that doesn't have a spiritual or devotional life. Lastly, to understand the seasons and the times. You know, I can talk about stuff like this all day. I haven't even touched the surface of where we are in time. But I do know 5782, this is a release year. And when we have not followed, when you look back 5,700 years, when we have not followed these calendars and principles, we've had great depressions, we've had great recessions, we've had all kinds of calamities to take place in our earth because we've just not followed biblical principles. That's why he said the poor will always be with you, because we don't follow directions.
Real quick, Doc, before we give our closing, what should be our responsibility, or what should we look to be in a release year?
Again, I hadn't even started talking about, because they had to let the land rest in a release year. Access. God is bringing you into a level of access into what your destiny is, your fair share. God wants to make sure you get your double. But he also this is the year where he corrects some things. So the country is going to go through some correction. And also due process. That's what a release year is all about.
We thank you, Dr. Kevin Daniels, for being with us tonight, man. As you know, you are a regular reoccurring guest on here. Apostle Flanagan, thank you for checking in with us, brother. We got to get you on the platform with your prophetic self. But I got to thank you, Dr. Daniels. You came and you put it down. And look, y'all, I got pages of notes because I want to be able. And look, you take all of that good stuff Dr. Daniels said. You can summarize it by saying, Lord, whatever you're doing in this season, don't do it without me. I want to walk. Hallelujah. Lord, what the old folks say, Lord, let me walk each day with thee. Hallelujah. I just thank all of our guests for being with us tonight. Thank our guests for being with us tonight. I want to thank my right hand and my left hand, my main man, Mr. Shaka Pitts, on the ones and twos for being with us tonight. Next week, we're going to have Apostle Jakia Ledbetter. She reached out to me after she did an amazing job eulogizing our fallen officer, Kiana Holly, and she's going to be with us next week. Make sure that you tune in. As we always say, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. Be the change that you want to see. And remember, we can always be more.